Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack here. It is Friday, the 1st of November, 2024. We have made it to the last month of the hurricane season, at least as far as these go. That's a calendar, man-made calendar. We're there. We're in the 6th month of the hurricane season, and it has been a busy season for sure. Now, will we hit the hyperactive mark by means of the ACE score? There's a possibility that we will. The numbers of named storms may not have added up to what was predicted by pretty much everybody, but that doesn't matter. All those junk storms, and there's a couple of them that it could have been named, and for whatever reason the National Hurricane Center didn't think wise to do so. But the named storm count really doesn't matter. It's the impacts and the ACE, the accumulated cyclone energy. What's the quality of the season? And boy, has it been very impactful with some very powerful hurricanes, to be sure. And we are not done. We're starting November, and look at this. We have all three colors, the yellow, the orange, the red, because there's a lot happening, even though we're in the 6th month of the hurricane season. So good to be back from Florida. Still got a little bit of this cold lingering, but screw that. Let's get moving forward and see what we've got out there as we start the month ahead. First of all, the Madden-Julian oscillation is in the favorable area, or areas right now. Phases 8 and 1. Basically the MJO, the upper level winds, generally favorable in a small area, not everywhere. That's why we're not seeing 3 hurricanes out there right now. But the Madden-Julian oscillation is basically moving into and is in a favorable phase set. That's from the INSEP models. This is from the Euro, the EPS, the ensembles, whatever. So yeah, we're definitely favorable there. So the upper level winds are going to cooperate. And as such, we do have a couple of areas here now outlined or outlooked in the Western Caribbean, Southwestern Caribbean, Western Atlantic Basin. And then this little feature way up here, not too far from the Azores, low pressure area that really looks pretty healthy on satellite, kind of like a hurricane embedded in a larger circulation pattern. I'll show you that on a close-up here as we go forward. So we've got 3 areas. This one is of the most concern because this could cause some problems for our friends down here in some of these islands from Jamaica to the Cayman Islands, maybe Haiti over here, I think certainly Cuba, and an outside chance that we have to be concerned a little bit in extreme South Florida, and then maybe somewhere over in this area, and I'll explain as we go forward. Quite the interesting setup. And now that we are in November, weird things tend to happen with the tracks of stuff that does try to develop. You got your track weirdness, and you've got these upper level winds that are waiting up here somewhere. You know, the strong upper level winds, we're deep into fall now, and the battle of the seasons has commenced. So let's see what we have out on the visible, well, it's called the true color, satellite imagery this afternoon. Let's first of all look at this system up here to the northwest of the Azores Islands, which I just kind of drew a line through. Right in there, that little system right there, you got a lot of cold air aloft, you have a huge cyclonic area, and yet we could get a subtropical or tropical storm, and those are just technicalities. Bottom line, you do have some deep convection, and the reason you've got that deep convection over this little area, this little donut right there, it's got an eye, a little calm area right there. And the reason you can get that over marginally warm sea surface temperatures is all of the instability aloft over here, all the very cold air above this. And when that is anomalously present, much colder aloft than normal, then it's easier to pop that convection. It's all about the thermodynamics, and the thermodynamics do support, we'll put a big check mark here, that this could be subtropical, where the wind and the energy is kind of spread out over a larger area. Another way to think of subtropical is hybrid, kind of a mix between tropical, a purely tropical system, and one that had origins in the mid-latitudes, or as this system has developed in the high latitudes. But yeah, this could go on to be one of those subtropical storms, or tropical storm, purely, whatever, might get a name. We'll see. So will this be Patty first? We'll put a question mark there. Don't know. Could be. It certainly looks impressive on satellite, so we'll see what they say. The National Hurricane Center at the 8 p.m. Eastern Time update. Meanwhile, we do have energy that is starting to coalesce down here in the Southwest Caribbean Sea. Some more up in this region. Friend Brent, friend of the project, sent me a picture. Some rock slide action going on down there in the Virgin Islands. They've had a lot of heavy rain. Puerto Rico, a lot of heavy rain. Another friend of ours, Greg Diamond, up at Fox Weather, tweeted out that they've had the most rain in a single day, I believe, since Maria. You know, you think about Puerto Rico, and it's kind of tropical down there. Well, you're not used to seeing 5 inches of rain in one period. Maria brought a lot more than that, of course. That was devastating. So these tropical features, even when they are in their formative stages, can bring impacts. We know that, right? We're an educated group here. We're on top of stuff like that. But we really got to watch this area here because some interesting things look like they could be happening over the coming days. And it really does. It's just interesting to me, too. November 1st. Here we are. Yeah, it's still hurricane season. We all know that. But the fact that we're talking about 1 and then 2 and then 3 areas out here, that's also interesting, isn't it? Right on par with what we thought would be a pretty active year overall. So looking at the vorticity signature, you know this, one of my favorite tools. There it is. There's that energy down there north of Costa Rica and Panama. That isthmus down there. Isn't that a neat word, isthmus? Try to spell it. Connecting two land masses. And then you got another area, more oblong here, of energy or vorticity sitting right over Puerto Rico, right? And parts of the Virgin Islands over here. I think, though, this one's going to take over. The models are starting to come together. I got to cue that music, right? I'm not going to try to sing it, but you know the chorus. Yeah, everything's trying to come together in sort of an agreement between the models that something interesting is going to try to develop. And another big part of this, look at this. Haven't taken a look at the sea surface temperature profile in a while. I've been busy traveling and got the cold or whatever, but let's really look at what we've got here. Again, that's yesterday because it's always a day behind. This data lags. And let's see what we've got, all right, as we start the month of November. What is our base state? What do we got to work with? Well, I'll show you. Out here in the equatorial Pacific, we're getting darn close to La Nina. I mean, officially here. Climate Prediction Center, part of NOAA, they will designate that. But look at this right here, some purple showing up in there. We're talking more than 3 degrees Celsius below the long-term average. So the equatorial Pacific through here definitely got that La Nina coming in. Not nearly as robust as some of the climate models suggested that it could be. But I tell you, what has definitely been exceeding our expectations is this very warm Atlantic relative to average. And most of it is still very much so. There's the leftover wake from, what was that? We had Kirk out there and Leslie, is that right? If memory serves. Yeah, the cold wake left by those systems, that's still there. And a little bit of the damage, if you will, good damage, done by Milton, churning up the water in the eastern Gulf. But let's zoom in and take a look at what we've got. Still well above average all along the northern Gulf and the western Gulf. Most of the Caribbean also quite a bit warmer than average. A few areas of cool anomalies showing up. But again, this is pretty much related to Milton. Overall, I was just down there, as I mentioned. You saw some of the videos and me talking about that. I was in Cedar Key and then went over to Sarasota, Siesta Key area, and Nokomis down here. Picked up equipment and still warm air temperature wise, but the waters, this shelf water out here cools off pretty quickly. It warms rapidly and it can just as quickly cool off. But what we have not had, and we use blue to kind of draw this in, no big fronts coming down, clearing, down to the Yucatan Channel with that dry, dense, cold air coming in. We have not had that yet. So switch over to red, put a big old X in there. Nope, haven't had it yet. The Gulf is just gradually cooling off, just like if you take a big pot of water off the stove that was once boiling and you just set it aside, it gradually cools off. But if you had a fan over the top of it, or of course added ice to it, or injected cold water, that the cold, you're not going to put ice in the Gulf of Mexico, but the cold water getting upwelled like from Milton colder anyway, you can see all those effects. And so it's just a gradual cooling process. Nevertheless, the anomalies are still quite substantial as we head towards the first part of November here. We're in November and the last part of the hurricane season, and that's important because of what's going to be coming up, which we will get to in just a moment. First of all, though, East Coast and Northeast hadn't shown this in a long time either. We really got away with it. Nothing of any concern this year to speak of along the coastal areas. Certainly western North Carolina, completely different story. Devastating what happened in the wake of Helene there, but no East Coast hurricane threats this year. Pretty remarkable in the setup that we had, and water temperatures are cooling down as you'd expect. But here too, no major fronts, no major bouts of cold air, what we call that cold air advection, where you get a big storm coming off the coast and you blast northwest winds down and just cool everything off rapidly. As I mentioned with the Gulf, this is just gradually cooling off as well. Now, speaking of the Gulf, while this is an anomaly map, a departure from an average, this is your actual temperatures, and this gets to be really, really important as we get towards the sort of finale of today's update. There is your 26 Celsius line, and that's important because hurricanes typically like 26C tropical cyclones, the general term, and science is done in metric, so 26 Celsius, about 79.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's just call it 80, much easier to deal with a nice round number. So that's your 80-degree line. So only the areas closest to the United States coast up here are cooler than what you would need to support a tropical cyclone. And that is important because I do believe there's a good chance we're going to have something in this area over the next 5 to 7 days. And this area, we have plenty of warm water. That's 26 Celsius. This is your 27, 28 in here, 29 even coming through the Yucatan Channel. So we're not done. And while I do not know the end game, how this all finishes up, I do believe there's a chance that we could have, we'll put a big question mark in here, a few eyebrows starting to raise anywhere along the Gulf Coast, because this one's going to be hard to figure out because we're in November and the steering currents become wacky at best. And then finally, before we get to the modeling and kind of show you what's possible, we're looking at it here. A great tweet here from Ben Knoll. Marine heat wave conditions are widespread in the Caribbean Sea and also cover much of the Gulf. That's what I just showed you. And then this is important. We shall highlight it with yellow. Next week's potential tropical disturbance may face wind shear, so that's a negative, but there's no shortage of oceanic warmth and moisture. Several hurricanes this year have broken moisture records. So all of that is important. You can't just look at climatology. You can't just look at what you hope will happen. We got to look at what we've already dealt with this year, and everything seems to have, once it gets going, overperformed both intensity, the rainfall records. Some of these storm surge numbers in certain locations have been ridiculous. Certainly the flooding. So why break that precedent now? And I'm not being alarmist. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. All these ingredients are still there. It's just a little later in the season. The water temperatures are just a little bit cooler just south of the actual coastline as I showed you. But everything else is still in place. So we can't just turn our backs and say, it's November, nothing's going to happen. But I also don't have any evidence to suggest something significant could happen. We're in that in-between phase. We do have something that looks like it's going to develop, and then all these background conditions say, boy, we really better keep an eye on it. So let's take a look at one of those models now. We'll look at the GFS operational. All the models have tried to sort of rectify what might happen in and around this area. The favorable MJO, the background state, the warm water temperatures, various disturbances. You got one in here. You got this sort of gyre trying to set up down here. And just the way the airflow is in the Southwest Caribbean, it's kind of a hard thing to figure out. But it looks like the GFS here, and this is just the operational, I want to make that very clear, but it seems to be latching on to this idea that over even the next 48 hours, something should try to start developing and sort of congealing down here well off the coast of Colombia, South America, while this other disturbance just kind of stays strung out. So this should bundle the energy, at least according to the GFS, and be the dominant feature. And if we just move this out, that's 2 days. That's day 3. Pretty quick development there between Jamaica and Haiti, and that could be a close call for Jamaica. So maybe another one of these very small tropical cyclones that gets going in pretty rapid fashion. If we look at it from the upper level perspective, and this is where it becomes important, yes, it's sitting under that favorable MJO pattern, the upper level winds, nice outflow in all the quadrants. It makes sense. The strong westerlies and southwesterlies are sitting all the way over here, or your upper level troughing sitting to the northeast. So it does make sense, as in those very warm waters that I showed you. Ben Knoll talking about the precip and the moisture and whatnot. How does that look? Ample humidity and moisture, small system. Yes, lots and lots of dry air lurking all around it. But where it is, looks like it's pretty protected. So we got to watch this. If you're in Jamaica, you got interest in southern Cuba, western parts of Hispaniola, specifically Haiti, maybe even our friends in the Cayman Islands. Hoping I'm going to speak with Adam, my friend down there, tomorrow as we talk about this. Got to watch it closely. That's only 84 hours out or so. So let's go back over to the vorticity part, because I like this, because this really shows you that lower levels and how well put together this is, and small. Spatially speaking, it's small. So that's roughly 2 days, 3 days, whatever. This is day 4. It makes landfall over Cuba according to this one model, this one run. And let's just move it on out. And yes, it does try to get into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. So perhaps this is day 5. This is next Wednesday. Maybe parts of the Keys could have some inclement weather. So we're going to have to really watch this. A lot of people heading south want to get down here and enjoy the snowbird life, right? This is only 5 days. I'm not showing you something 10 days out. Rarely do we do that here. And certainly it's not 2 weeks out. And anything out of context, I would never do that. So the point is, we got to really watch this, all right? So that takes us out to day 5, finally days 6 and 7. Again, I told you some weird things can happen in November. Look at that strong area of high pressure to the north blocking this. That's a week away. A lot can change. And yes, there seems to be another one that tries to develop north of the Dominican Republic. So, that idea of a very busy November, yeah, that really could have merit. So we got a lot to watch here. Let's just go back and see the evolution of this. Again, that southwest feature seems to be the dominant, and it takes over, moves in there, rides Cuba, and then gets into the Gulf of Mexico by about day 7. Beyond that, we have to just wait and see. The first milestone, does this actually in the next 2 days take over and bundle that energy down here and become more dominant over what's happening over here? And we'll know, because we'll be on top of it. All right, let's get back over here so I can sign off. And generally speaking, I made it through the update without a horrible coughing fit. Colds are the worst, aren't they? I mean, you get sick and you got to lay down and rest when you get really ill, pneumonia or whatever. I get it. But a common cold, it's like you get a splinter in your thumb and you can't work, or if you're, whatever you do, just imagine that. It's such a huge annoyance. It's not the end of the world. You're not deathly ill, but you got a freaking splinter in your thumb. That's like having a cold. It just weights you down and it makes it hard to do stuff. But anyway, good to be back. Good to talk to you about this stuff. We'll be on top of it. I will have another update tomorrow and another one on Sunday. And then on Monday, all this stuff will be gone. It better be. And I'll have all my head will be back in complete control from this cold. And we're going to do another live update on Monday, because we might be talking about something pretty important by that time, right? Absolutely. It's going to be very interesting over the next few days. Until then, have a great rest of your Friday, a great weekend ahead. From all of us at Hurricane Track, I am Mark Sudduth. Thanks for giving me a part of your day. I'll talk to you again over the weekend.